On this episode of Ask the Experts, I'm sitting here with Brian Davis. He's the founder of sparkrental.com. Hey, Brian, how are you today?
Rick, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. So tell me, where are you in this world?
Well, I'm in Brasilia, the capital of Brazil.
Oh, wow. And I'm all the way in Italy. Like, it's amazing the power of the internet, right? And especially,
Absolutely.
well, I mean, if you're living there, I'm used to working from home, for instance, but all of this, now working from home is like the new thing. Everybody's like, oh, well, a lot of people are excited to be able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we've been a 100% virtual company since our founding,
Mhm.
which I make it sound like it was a super long time ago. It was only 2016, so so it was only 5 years ago. Uh, but yeah, we've been 100% virtual since the very beginning. And it's great. We get to live anywhere, work from anywhere. We get to hire employees who live anywhere, which, some Americans get upset about. But the fact is, you can hire very talented people at a fraction of the cost of US labor when you can hire internationally. So, allowing for that geo arbitrage, it just gives you a lot more options, especially when you're a small startup like we are. We're a small family startup. Sometimes you need those low expenses when you're trying to get off the runway, right?
Sure. No, it makes total sense. It gives you a lot of opportunity to be able to reinvest, your net income at the end of the month, and continue doing it. I read a statistic somewhere. It was something like 60% of businesses fail within the first 5 years. It
I
was a
heard it
it's
was 80.
Yeah,
So
it's a really big number, right? So for you to get it through this far, congratulations. I've started two businesses in the past, and I've done it perhaps in somewhat similar manner. I've hired both locally as well as abroad for varying reasons, but including financial. And it's part of the reason why the business was able to stay afloat, so to speak, because at the end of the day, you're running a business, and you're keeping control of your costs, and so on. So no, that makes perfect sense to me. So tell me, what is sparkrental.com? I mean, you got me curious.
so there are really two pillars to our business. One is educating everyday people, middle class people who have unrelated jobs, on how to invest in rental properties to create passive income streams through real estate, with the ultimate goal of using that income to replace their full-time job. So education is one big pillar of our business. We do a lot of webinars. We have online courses. We have hundreds of articles on our blog. Some of our courses are free. Some we charge for. All of our webinars are free. All of our blog articles are, of course, free. So education is really important to us, not just about landlording and real estate investing, but also about personal finance, FIRE, financial independence, and retiring early. So yeah, that's a huge component of our business. And then the other pillar of our business is software, online software to help these kind of mom and pop landlords to manage their rental properties. There are some very good software platforms out there for larger property management firms and the larger corporate landlords, but there aren't as many good software services for the small guy, the mom and pop landlord who owns, two, three, four, 10 rental properties, as opposed to a series of apartment buildings with 300 units apiece.
Sure.
So yeah, we try to make the software as cheap and easy as possible for these mom and pop landlords who have a totally unrelated full-time job somewhere else.
So this is a hosted solution
It
that
is.
you would somewhere on your cloud, and people can log in and do whatever it is they need to do to manage their apartment rentals.
Exactly. So yeah, it's all online. You can log in from your phone or tablet or your PC or whatever, and you can do things like post your vacant rental units for to advertise
Mhm.
on a whole bunch of platforms like apartments.com and for rent.com and so forth. We do tenant screening reports, rental applications, state-specific lease agreements that you can generate with just a couple clicks. We do online rent collection, or rather we're about to launch online rent collection. We do state-specific eviction notices and all that kind of stuff that you just need to have access to as a landlord.
Right. I remember, so I'm no longer a landlord, but I was a landlord for about 12 years.
Oh, wow, okay.
And for the first, until I moved to Italy, actually, when I moved, I made a personal choice, partly because of where property prices went, but
Fair
also,
enough.
um, yeah, and also because I thought, even though I had a property manager, being on the opposite side of the world, I didn't feel comfortable leaving tenants in a home where I as the owner wasn't there. In fact, the home was about a 12-hour drive from where I lived, but 1 hour flight, so it was close enough. But where I live now, it's like a 9-hour flight. You have to, and these are things that you plan like weeks in advance, and especially now with COVID and all of that, it'd be nearly impossible. I mean, actually, it would be impossible for me to get there within a 2-week period. Just it would be absolutely impossible. So I think I made the right choice, but I definitely see how rental properties can certainly boost somebody's income and get them to that lifestyle where they can become financially independent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally understand where you're coming from as far as not wanting to be an overseas landlord. I mean, I am an overseas landlord, and there are moments of difficulty.
Yeah.
And to your point about having a property manager and still having concerns about that, you still have to manage the property manager, right? It's not like all of your headaches go away instantly just because you sign a property management agreement. You still have to stay on top of the property manager. So people ask us all the time, oh, should I manage myself or should I hire a property manager? And there's no right or wrong answer, but we do tell people that if you do outsource it to a property manager, you don't outsource every problem, you just reduce your headaches. So
Right, and you reduce your net income. I think.
that too.
So I remember I had so the first property manager I had two. The first property manager I had was kind of like a glorified in between who made no decisions whatsoever. She was just kind of like the person who would call me when a tenant would call her, and she would answer to the best of her ability, but then she'd just call me just to double check. So I had this one point of contact, but eventually it got to a point where two tenants became four tenants, became more tenants, and so on. And I ended up with someone who was more dedicated and operated as a business. And interestingly, when I went with that licensed property manager, the professional property manager, my net income for that year was like zero, because she was going around fixing all of the things that needed to get fixed, and did all of the things she needed to do according to her. And I mean, that was fine. I mean, whatever. But you're right. You don't. It doesn't solve all of the problems. The property manager doesn't do all of that. But so what in terms of education, what do you suggest to those viewers out there who are interested in buying a rental property? What would you suggest they look at buying?
Well, I mean,
Like
that's
a one unit home. Like my suggestion is always a fourplex, but I mean, what do you recommend?
well, it depends on a lot of things.
Mhm.
So I guess the first way I want to answer that question is just saying that real estate investing is not for everybody. And I've had a lot of friends ask me over the years, should I buy a rental property? Should I diversify into real estate? And the first thing I tell them is that you can diversify into real estate without directly going out and buying rental properties. Now, I'm probably turning away potential customers here by saying this, but investing in real estate, really, it has to be an interest of yours, almost like a hobby or a side hustle or a side business of yours. It takes not only labor on your part. I mean, this is not passive investing, at least not in the very beginning. It takes labor. It also takes expertise and knowledge and skill, and it takes time and effort on your part to develop that knowledge and skill. So if you just want to diversify your assets, into real estate, then go out and buy some REITs or invest in some crowdfunding websites or some private REITs, or whatever, but there are way easier ways to invest in real estate if your only goal is to diversify your portfolio. Now, for people who are interested in buying properties themselves and owning properties directly as a landlord, as for what kind of property you should buy, it really depends. It depends on the market where you're investing. I mean, some markets don't have many small multifamily properties, those 2 to 4 unit properties that you were just talking about, Rick. Some markets have plenty of those, and it's a viable investment option. Those do qualify for, or they count as residential properties from a lending standpoint. So you can borrow residential mortgage loans to fund them, at least the first couple. You hit a ceiling pretty quickly on those. Usually 4 mortgages is the most that conventional mortgage lenders will allow. But for your first couple investment properties, if they're under 4 units, you can go out and get a conventional mortgage loan through the same broker or lender that you use for your primary residence mortgage loan. If you go above 4 units, then those count as commercial properties. So you need either commercial financing, or nowadays you can get portfolio loans, which are just private loans. Some people use them interchangeably with hard money loans, although hard money loans typically refer more to purchase rehab loans, short-term loans, as opposed to the longer-term mortgages.
Shorter term because of the interest rates.
Yeah. And they usually put a balloon on that, like a 12-month. I mean, you have to pay it off within 12 months typically. Yeah. So, but yeah, you do have plenty of options, whether you're going residential, under 4 units, or 4 or under, or over 4. But the options do thin out if you buy an apartment building with 5 or more units.
Sure. Yeah, because then the entire qualification is a completely different process.
It is.
But
and they cost more in most cases.
And they cost, the financing costs more. The building probably costs more. But, I think certainly in my own experience, one could buy an apartment block depending on the rental roll and the price of the building. They could get a commercial mortgage for practically the same loan to value as they were able to get residential. It's just that the calculations are completely different. Cap rate being the most important.
Yeah, the calculations are a little different. Like we just talked about, some of the lending options are different. And you need, in most cases, you do need a larger down payment. You can, if your credit is strong, you can often get away with a 20% down payment with residential loans, whether they're conventional mortgage loans or portfolio loans. If you have credit over 700 or 720 in some cases, you can sometimes get those 20% down loans. With commercial loans, you tend to need to put down 25%, maybe 30%. Even if you do have stronger credit personally. But to your point, depending on your market, you may be able to pick up an apartment building for not too much more than you could pick up a small multifamily property, or even a higher end single family home. So it just depends on your market.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It depends. And do you think that with FIRE, or financial independence, we always talk about become debt free, right? Should we be actually mortgage free? Because I always have this banter with everyone, and in my view, 2% money or 3% money, you can't go wrong with that.
Yeah. So first of all, I agree with you. Second of all, I want to expand on a concept that Robert Kiyosaki made famous: the differentiation between good debt versus bad debt. And there is absolutely such a thing as good debt and such a thing as bad debt. Now, most debt is bad debt. So, it's understandable why people tend to think of all debt as bad debt, because most of it is. So consumer loans, personal loans, or credit card debt, these are all bad debt. So, as Kiyosaki put it very simply, and I'm just going to rephrase him because he put it so well: bad debt is anything that makes you poor at the end of the month. So credit card debt, that makes you poorer at the end of the month, right? I mean, you don't need to go out and rack up credit card debt buying that latest style jacket, right? Now, good debt is anything that makes you richer at the end of the month. So if you take out a mortgage to buy a rental property, and that rental property cash flows $300 a month, net cash flow, then you are $300 richer at the end of that month because you went out and got a loan and bought this property that you would not have been able to buy with cash, right? So there is good debt versus bad debt. Rental property mortgages are the epitome of good debt, as long as the property cash flows, of course. It has to produce positive cash flow. So, and then the more nuanced answer even than that is that depending on where you are in your life, debt can either be, or good debt rather, can either be super constructive. As you get later in your career and you get closer to retirement and your risk tolerance gets lower, then you may want to start thinking about paying off even that good debt, as you build more cash and as you have a larger net worth and you have more options at your disposal to pay off that debt. It can reduce your risk entering retirement when you are relying on the income from your investments to live on, and you can't just depend on your 9-to-5 job income to get you there. And by retirement, that could be reaching financial independence at age 40, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. No,
so
that makes perfect sense.
It just depends on where you are in your career, where you are in your life, and how much risk tolerance you have. I know I answered that question.
Couldn't have said it better myself. But I'm glad. I mean, you and I, we hadn't had this conversation before, but I had a feeling that we'd be on the same page. So tell me, you're all the way in Brazil. How is it managing? What is it like managing finances in Brazil as an expat? I mean, you must be living so cheap over there. Must cost nothing.
Well, we are living cheaply. So Brasilia, where we are, the capital city, is on the more expensive side for a Brazilian city. Now, with that being said, we don't have any housing costs. So in some ways, it doesn't really matter. We get free housing through my wife's work. My wife is a school counselor for the embassy school here in Brazil. And before that, she was a school counselor at an American school in Abu Dhabi. So we left the US in 2015. We spent 4 years living in Abu Dhabi. And while I was there, I started Spark Rental with my partner, Denny. And then we moved to Brasilia a little under 2 years ago. The international lifestyle is great. So even if, we're fortunate in the sense that we have free housing through her job. But even if that's not the case for you, you can still take advantage of that lower cost of living overseas. Whether you are financially independent or trying to reach financial independence, that lower cost of living just helps you save so much more money, especially if you're getting paid in US dollars and getting paid a US salary while living somewhere with super low cost of living. So, in our case, we actually live entirely on my wife's salary, and we save and invest all of my income. It actually works out great. My wife gets paid in Brazilian reais, the local currency, which is actually currently very, very weak against the dollar, which it actually doesn't really impact us at all because we live exclusively on her income here. So that's the currency we're living on.
Right, you're spending the money there locally.
Right. So we're not, for the most part, we're not trying to send it back to the US and convert it into US dollars. So it works out fine. I get paid in US dollars. I mean, Spark Rental is a US business. My partner lives in the US. Some of our employees are in the US. So it doesn't matter. It works out great.
Cool. Well, I mean, that it sounds perfect. I mean, you're sort of preaching to the choir. Although I'm from Canada, and I mean now in Italy dealing with euros, but the cost of living here is like half about as than what I was used to. So I could totally.
Italy has a very affordable cost of living for Europe.
Sure. I mean, a rental property in in a downtown. I mean, forget about Rome or Milan, like some gigantic city. I mean, it's kind of like a New York or Los Angeles. Of course, it's going to be expensive. Right. But I mean, you live just a little out, further out. I mean, 500 euros a month. 600 euros a month for a decent apartment is not unheard of.
Oh yeah. I
And
mean,
food costs
we,
nothing. Food is practically given away. Wine
oh
costs
yeah.
less. Wine costs less than water here.
Yeah. So my wife and I spent a month living in Genova
Oh wow.
in Italy one summer a few years back,
Mhm,
and it was great. And we booked an Airbnb for a month, so we're
mhm.
paying premium
Sure.
rents, and it was still something like $700 a month to live in this. It was the Carugi district
Mhm,
in Genoa, or Genova as they
mhm.
pronounce it in Italy. But it was this old medieval downtown district, this old medieval center city area in Genova, which granted is a little bit of a grittier city. Not everyone loves it. My wife didn't like it as much as I did. Um, but yeah, I mean, we were living in this medieval piazza, or palazzo rather, on a piazza.
Yeah, of course.
and and it was fantastic. It was great. And
Did
like
you
you
eat a
said,
lot of
wine was
focaccia?
dirt cheap. We
Did you eat a
did. We
lot
ate
of?
a lot of focaccia. We drank a lot of Italian wine.
Wow.
Ate a lot of Italian food, of course. It
Mhm.
was fantastic.
Wonderful. Well, what would your advice be to someone who is, thinking about retirement? They maybe they've got a few years, maybe they don't, and they want to live abroad. What would be your suggestion to them?
Well, the first thing you have to do if you're thinking about moving overseas is to figure out how you're going to earn money, right?
Mhm.
If you're not financially independent yet.
Sure.
So, in my wife's case, she was a school counselor before we moved abroad, and she discovered that the international education community pays a lot better than educators get paid in the U.S. And they, in large part, provide free housing, provide free
Wow.
flights home every year, full health insurance. I mean, so that was the path that we took. And when we moved overseas, I was working for another company, but it was also an 100% remote company. So I was able to move overseas with them before branching off on my own to start a business. But if you don't already have a job where you can telecommute full time, you can certainly go out and find one. I mean, there are entire job platforms around that. Flex Jobs being the best known example. You can go on there and look for jobs that are 100% telecommute. You can also go out and create your own income by freelancing. So I actually, to this day, I still do some freelance writing, largely for fun, but it also provides a stable income floor. As a business owner, it's nice to be able to tell my wife, here's the bare minimum that I'm going to earn every
Sure.
month. Um, so, and there are a million jobs you can do freelance, right? You can do direct graphic design or web development or usability, or user experience, UX. I mean, there's so many things beyond just writing that you can do freelance. Or you can go out and start a business like I did,
That's right.
or as so many people do. Start an online business. You can start it on the side of your full-time job for now. Um, and the money that you earn living overseas, you don't need as much money to live on every month as you do in the US or Canada. So, I mean, there are so many places in this world where you can live a very comfortable, and in some cases even luxurious lifestyle on 2,000 US dollars a month. So you don't need as much as you think you do. You don't need to replace your full US or Canadian salary in order to move abroad. You just need to earn enough to cover that lower cost of living in places like Ecuador or Brazil or
Right.
Italy, right?
Right.
So
That's incredible advice, and I completely agree. In fact, it reminds me. You mentioned Ecuador. I was in Nicaragua a couple of years ago, and I met some expats who are living on $700 US a month, and
wow,
apparently they were living fine.
yeah.
I didn't see their home, but I didn't see it. I'm sure they didn't have dirt floors, but they said they were
Right.
living fine. So hey, what the heck, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, we have a full-time nanny
Yeah.
for
Uh-huh.
$500 US a month. So yeah, I mean, we have an 8-month-old daughter, and so we have a full-time nanny. She comes 7 to 4 every day. She does some cooking and food prep for us. She cleans our apartment. I haven't done a dish in so long.
That's
I mean,
incredible. And the
yeah,
baby's
it's
taken care
great.
of.
Well, yeah, yeah, and the baby's taken care of, so my wife and I can both work full time and not worry about it. In fact, a couple hours ago, before we got on this interview, my wife was sending me these frantic, upset Skype messages talking about how Millie, our daughter, was crying when she took her away from the nanny. And now she was worried that Millie loves the nanny more than she
Oh.
loves her. Yeah,
Oh.
I mean, you can get such affordable, high quality
Right.
healthcare, baby care, childcare, all that stuff overseas. On top of that, the lower cost housing and food and all that. So, highly recommend the international lifestyle.
Wonderful. So, Brian, what is next for you? Do you have plans in the next 5 years? Will you be there in the next 5 years, or?
Well, so we are going to be in Brasilia for at least one more school year. So we'll be here through June of 2022 at least. Our goal is to move to Europe, like you've done.
Cool.
So, there are a couple of technical reasons why it's difficult for international educators to move to Europe. There are fewer jobs, they're in higher demand. They actually hire later in the school year than other places. So, you have to take that leap of faith of telling your current boss that you're not coming back before you have another job lined up. But our goal is to move to Europe in 2022. Depends on what jobs are available for my wife. We might move back to the US. My wife started making noises about being closer to her parents who are getting older. But, we love the international life, and, we hope to be financially independent within the next few years.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've made very quick progress in the last few years being overseas and having such low cost of living. So we hope to get there. I'm hoping to get there within the next 2 years. It might be 5.
And having a business is probably the single easiest, most difficult, but the easiest way to get there fast, right?
Yeah,
I don't know too many people that, unless you're earning like a ton, like some obscene amount of money in tech as an executive or whatnot. I think owning a business is the fastest way that one can become financially independent. It's just the hardest, but it's the fastest as well, and most legal.
Fair enough. Yeah, owning a business is the hardest thing that I've ever done, was starting a business. It really has been. Now, that being said, it's also been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. It's not easy money. It's not necessarily fast money. There were times early in our business when, it put a great strain on my marriage. The fact that I was not only was I not earning any money, but I was burning through money, trying to get the business off the ground. And eventually we got it off the ground, largely based on the fact that our expenses were so low. We are at 100% telecommute business. It keeps our costs low. So it did take off, but it was not an easy road getting there. But to your point, it sets you up for so many other successes. We might sell the business one day for hopefully a large quantity of money, or we might keep it as a lifestyle business that keeps generating income for us. Even as my partner and I step further back from the business, my partner is planning on semi-retiring from the company in less than a year from now. I will not be. I'll be around for a little longer. But it'll be a lifestyle business for us for as long as we keep it. And if we sell it one day, great. But even that aside, having the business has actually exposed me to so many other opportunities that I never would have gotten as an employee. So, for example, we have invitations to partner with very experienced and much larger real estate investors than myself on larger multifamily deals, which I never would have gotten, back when I was an employee working for another company. I made these connections because of the work that I'm doing at Spark Rental. The freelance writing that I do, those doors opened for me because I had already built a little bit of a name for myself with Spark Rental. Even though the company wasn't earning a ton of money at that point, I had something that I could point to and say, I'm an expert because I do X, Y, Z. So, it's opened doors for me, and I've discovered other investment strategies and investment types that I never would have been exposed to otherwise. So doors open for you when you own a business that just would not have ever been open to me as an employee. Completely. I know that was a long answer to your question.
I completely agree. I'm just sitting here going, yep. I get it. I completely agree. Well, listen, this has been a lot of fun. If you do happen to make it out to Europe, look me up.
I certainly will.
I'm
I
sure
look forward to having a glass of Chianti with you out on the piazza.
if we want to know more about sparkrental.com, where can we visit you online?
Well, you can, of course, come to sparkrental.com and message us through there. My partner and I do read every message, every email that comes through Spark Rental. You can also reach us through our Facebook page, Spark Rental. It's just facebook.com/Spark Rental. We have a Twitter account and Instagram. We also have a Facebook group that I would argue is the best Facebook group and one of the largest Facebook groups for real estate investors and landlords. It's the Real Estate Investors, Property Managers, and Landlords Hub. It's got, I don't know, 40,000 some
Awesome.
real estate investors and landlords in there. And it's heavily policed by our moderators. But yeah, just find a way to reach out to us. There are so many ways, through our website, through our social media. We would love to hear from you. We're very easily reached. We are a small family business, so we do personally read every correspondence. So
Beautiful.
please reach out.
Thanks so much for being on the show with me.
Oh, Rick, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Take care.